Welcome everybody to Learn with Lowell. Today we're joined with Selina, the founder of SØVN. They're out in Netherlands. I'm not allowed to say where it is because no one wants visitors. And and we're gonna get into SOV and Bruxism and all these things that she's been working on for the last several years. But Selina, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lowell. Happy to be here. And it's called
Yeah.
SØVN. The name,
SØVN?
yeah, SØVN. The name is Norwegian for sleep. And yeah, we're a sleep wellness company. But I also like the name SØVN because we address bruxism, and I always think like, okay, you need to soften your jaw. So
Ah,
like how you would say soften, yeah.
that
Although I
makes
think
more
that
sense.
Norwegian would say it's SØVN is the proper way of saying it, but we just say
Mm.
SØVN.
So then, starting there, for people who don't know, and I
Yeah.
didn't know before, like a friend of ours connected us, and I was like, "What is this?" This is pretty cool. What is bruxism?
Yeah. So bruxism is actually an umbrella term to describe teeth grinding, jaw clenching, bracing, and trusting. So it's actually a normal thing that most of us do, where you tighten your muscle or you grind your teeth. Um, yeah. So actually, if you do a sleep study with just the general population, you'll find.
At any point in this conversation, if you find value in it, please subscribe. It is hugely beneficial, and it tells Google and everyone out there that this is content worth watching. Thank you for everyone thus far who has commented, liked, subscribed, and told their friends.
A good 60% of people do this rhythmic masticatory muscular movement where they basically their jaw muscles is doing something in their sleep. It's absolutely normal. But for some people, it turns into an issue because they either wear down their tooth really bad or they wake up with this really sore jaw, headaches, pains, migraines. Some people develop tinnitus because of that. And I think when it becomes this health issue, that's when, yeah, you need to address that. But that's what bruxism is.
How severe is it? Like, how much? Yeah, what is it actually like to have bruxism? To have the grinding down?
Yeah. Well, I can speak for, I think for everyone it's sort of different. Like for me, I started grinding my teeth when I was 5. Obviously, when I was 5, I didn't know this, but my brother and sister would say like, "Oh yeah, you're grinding your teeth again last night." I had an ex who was convinced that my house was haunted because he would hear this strange noise coming from my side of the bed, and he didn't know it was because of my teeth grinding. Um, and he just thought it was some ghost. But for me, basically, my teeth get really ground down. I had a lot of gum issues as a result because of the impact that it puts on your teeth every night. And yeah, I've already had lost a molar, get a new implant, and that implant had broken twice, even though I've regularly worn my mouth guards. So the force that is impacted on your tooth can be up to 10 times greater than when you're chewing. So I'll let you think about that. So that's a lot of force, right? And that could be reflected in wearing down of the teeth or the jaw muscles. I think for some people, that means they wake up with really, really sore jaw, just unbearable pain, really, really stiff neck. And yeah, if you wake up already feeling shitty like that, that really impacts the rest of your day.
Yeah, it's. I was thinking when I was reading about it and hearing from you is that it sounds extremely painful. So a part of my head is like, okay, so we know something exists. Like, how would you know if you had it? It's like the pain would let you know. Like if you're like anywhere near it, like the pain lets you know. It
Yeah,
does it ever like start small? Like you start like when you're like at some point in your life. I don't know if it can happen randomly, but does it ever like start small? Like you start slowly grinding, and then for some reason it starts getting worse over time. So like you have to be a little bit more aware, like sensitive to this idea that maybe you have bruxism and it'll get worse, so
yeah,
you should be mindful of it, or is it just like come on and it's
absolutely.
consistent?
Absolutely. Well, I think one, it does come and goes because it's quite a complex behavior that's affected by a lot of things. I mean, we always say it originates in the central nervous system. So, like if you get a lot of, if your sleep is not great because you drink caffeine too late in the night and you have a lot of microarousal or sleep disruptions throughout the night, you tend to get a lot of these grinding, clenching behavior as well. Certain SSRIs have been known to increase the likelihood of people doing this. So there are a lot of things that can influence that. And it is funny if you look at who tends to grind more, it's people between the age of 25 to 45. So we tend to correlate this with when things are the most stressful in your life. This is when you start having kids, but also a caregiver for your elderly parents. You also have work, so a lot of things happening. Although kids also tend to do it a lot as well. This is the funny thing. I think a lot of parents know this. And then it tends to disappear when people turn around like 50 or so. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. And also the other thing I want to mention is research has shown that it is a habit in a way, in the sense that the more you do it, the more your brain actually forms connection that makes it easier for you to do it. And therefore, the more you do it. So at a certain point, it is good for you to become more aware that, say, like, you notice you tend to tense your jaw muscles during the day when you're concentrating behind the computer. Figure out how you can be more aware of that and relax your jaw and try to do less of that, because it does carries over to your sleep. Yeah.
And I was under the impression that when we're sleeping, we're like kind of in some form of like sleep paralysis. So is that, I guess, A, is that not the case? And then B, it's like a part of bruxism, like overcoming sleep paralysis and still moving your jaw in that way.
I have not seen any research that connects it to sleep paralysis. What we know is that these tends to happen during that moment. We call it during microarousals. So that's when your sleep is sort of getting disrupted. It always gets preceded by an increase in your sympathetic nervous system. So like your heart rate starts going up, your breathing rate starts going up, and then you have this microarousals moment. And then the person starts expressing it through clenching their jaw, grinding their teeth. And what's interesting is this behavior of, grinding your teeth or clenching your teeth seems to trigger this trigeminal nervous system that does have an effect of lowering your heart rate. So some research have tried to link it or hypothesize that maybe this is actually simply a reflex system to bring your heart rate down and sort of stabilize your sleep. But unfortunately, in some people, this reflex sort of continues even though it's already past its expiry date when it's no longer useful.
Yeah. What's the point of a microarousal? Is it just like your heart gets elevated or something? Like, why does the body do that? Do you know?
Well, it's not that the body does that. It's just that sometimes there's environmental things that happen around you that causes a microarousal. It could be like a simple pin drop, in the bedroom, or there's because all your sensory system are actually still on while you're asleep, right? We're good, evolutionarily speaking, that way, that we're always calibrating and sensing for danger. So it could be that, you have a newborn baby and you hear a little noise, and that would cause a microarousal. Or this also happens if you have a super, stressful or high intensity workout right before sleep. You tend to have those microarousals as well. Basically, when you have these sleep disruptions happening. For me, I found this as I could start tracking the sleep with our device. I found out that after watching really gory horror movies, so like Saw or something like that, my grinding tends to pick up or like increase significantly because I have a lot of microarousals during those nights. I never connected it until I started tracking my data, but to a lot of people, they said, yeah, of course it makes sense. You're sort of like still pretty agitated and pretty amped up after that kind of movies. So it makes sense why you would have these sleep disruptions.
Yeah. And then on your website, you say the SØVN is not a cure. We don't believe teeth grinding and clenching is a disorder that requires a cure either. So it's more just like something to manage it with your technology. Like, that's how you say about it?
Yeah, I think for the longest time, people just think like teeth grinding, that sounds so weird. It's something that you absolutely need to eliminate, right? Because the idea of, yeah, you grinding your teeth at night randomly is just so unsettling. But then if you know that actually this is something that a lot of people do, normal people do throughout their life, then you start thinking about it differently and saying, hey, this is actually a behavior, not something that you need to eliminate completely. It's just something to be managed. And so that's how we've always seen kind of like the core of our product is like, we're not here to completely eliminate bruxism because we don't believe it needs to be eliminated. It's more of understanding, when do you grind your teeth? What is causing you to increase or decrease your bruxism? Like I already mentioned, things related to your sleep hygiene. So like, do you watch and work on a computer right up until your bedtime? Do you doom scroll, in bed before going to bed? Like all of these things affect your sleep quality, how fragmented your sleep are. And if your sleep are fragmented and disrupted, it will also influence how much grinding and clenching you do at night. And then, with the app, we want people to be able to track things that they eat and consume as well. So it could be your medications, it could be your caffeine consumptions, it could be alcohol, because these are things that have been demonstrated to also affect your sleep and also affect your bruxism. Of course, we have a feature where, we provide a soothing vibration sound stimulation to get people back to sleep after this microarousal and try to minimize the duration of their grinding and clenching behavior. But I would say that is just one feature of all the holistic thing that we provide in the product.
Yeah. What so when there is damage, like you mentioned your molar, is it just like normal, you just go see a dentist and they fix it, that type of thing? And then once you're aware of it on that level, start using a device like what you're making to kind of counteract it?
Well, the thing about, okay, you go, like for me, I destroyed my molar. I had to go get a new implant. And within 2 weeks, basically, the implant came off because of the grinding forces. So even if after you get your teeth fixed, your behavior is still there. So you kind of still need to manage and make sure that is taken care of. I think the mouth guard does help for some people. So if you look at the research, if your grinding and clenching is related to sleep apnea, which sometimes it is, then having a mouth guard that helps with your sleep apnea, so this is the one that like moves your jaw forward and opens up your airway, can resolve it. And then for other people whose grinding and clenching is not related to sleep apnea, the mouth guard could help you be more aware of your behavior, and as a result, it reduces it. But I think for 40-50% of people, the mouth guard doesn't really do anything to the behavior other than simply covering your teeth and protecting it that way. So what we're trying to address is sort of like this. We're just basically trying to provide alternative solution and a complementary solution to what's already out there, and get people to understand that this is more than simply something that you do during the night. There's a lot of things that you do during the day that you could also do to improve or address your grinding and your clenching.
Yeah. What's the population size of people that are specifically, like, if you, from like a business standpoint, how big is a target market for what you want, like for your technology?
I kind of want to let you guess first. I'm always curious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's 8 billion people on the planet.
Like
like
how
50 million.
percent of people do you think do this?
Probably like 1%. So like the whole teeth grinding, probably like a third. But to the level of like molar explosion, I would say like 1%, 0.1%.
Yeah, I think it's more in the range of like 1% if you take so 10% of people have sleep bruxism, around 20% people have daytime bruxism. So these are people who actually do it during the day. And then of those, 40% are what we call chronic. So they do it on a regular basis. And around 15% are what develop complications or have some sort of health issues as a result of that. So we calculated that in US and Europe alone, so the chronic ones is about 9 million people. And then, but even the ones who doesn't develop like the complex cases where they have like significant pain, or they lost a molar and spend thousands of euros every year trying to fix it, people are already buying stuff in order to fix this because they want, they get told by their dentist, you need to get a mouth guard. And what's funny is for some of these people, they actually might not need to wear a mouth guard at all. It might just be like a one-time thing that they did or not do. So one of the things that we also want to address with the device is get people to understand, are you actually still grinding and clenching? Because if not, you actually don't need to have this strange thing in your mouth to sleep, and you can just sleep naturally, Yeah, so even though we start from bruxism, our overall goal is to also address just the broader sleep health, because I think there's a lot of interesting things that we could address with our technology. Yeah.
You see it being able to be kind of like a heart monitor. So like there are times when if you have like a heart problem or whatever, they'll like hook you up, and then for like 2 weeks they monitor your stuff to see like to the severity of what's going on, or if it's resolved. And so someone could put your earphones in or what have you, and then detect and monitor it over the course of like 2 weeks to see, is this like, you see a dentist and they say, hey, how severe is this? So they give this to you for 2 weeks. It's like, oh, this is a one-time event or more, and we can like make the plan accordingly from there. Do you see that being an element of what you're building?
Yeah, I think that's one of the elements for sure, because right now the way that dentists will tell you whether you grind your teeth or not is they basically look at tooth wear. And what we've known from all the research is tooth wear is not really a good indicator, because this tooth wear could have happened, a year ago, 2 years ago, and actually you're no longer grinding now. So for a very, very long time, we've always been wanting an objective measurement system that will let the dentist and the person knows how much are they grinding really every night. But all the tools that's been out there so far are cumbersome. It's not very customer friendly, so people are quite hesitant to use it, and it's also super expensive and then not very accurate. So we're trying to change that. Yeah, and then I think what's been really interesting, and this is a little bit new, is we've started testing our prototypes, and we're finding out that we're also picking up, people's breathing rate and people's heart rate and with these two indicators, we can see the sleep stage that they're in, when microarousals are happening. Is this grinding and clenching behavior preceded or followed by some sort of an apnea breathing events? So what we hope to provide is not just a yes, no, but a more nuanced view of, actually, this is when you're doing it during this sleep stage, and it tends to happen right after an apnea episode, in which case, hey, you probably have some, conversations to have with your doctor about sleep apnea.
And it's just it's like a device that you stick in your ears, right? And I could get the jaw, because like, you pop your ears if you're on an airplane. How does it detect everything else that you just mentioned, like breathing rate and stuff?
Yeah. Well, to be very honest, like the breathing rate and the heart rate was like a complete serendipitous observation. It was kind of like, holy shit, we didn't know that we could detect all of this. So it's an earbud similar to what you would wear during the day. It actually can play music, and it has a speaker and everything. The only difference is that it's way tinier than what you've seen in the market so far. It's probably 30 to 50% smaller than an AirPods. It doesn't have an antenna that's sticking out, something that's really small and flush, so you can just sleep on it. And how it detects breathing and heart rate is that when you breathe, there is a jaw movement that happens, especially when you're sleeping. And when your breathing rate gets harder, when respiratory effort increases, especially because you have like apnea or some sort of breathing obstructions, then the jaw moves even bigger. So you can see that. In terms of the heart rate, this was totally unexpected, but it makes sense. there's two arteries that's going right in front of your ear. And because of where the sensor is located, it could pick that up there. But the heart rate part, it's novel how we're picking it up, but people have been trying to pick up heart rate with just regular PPG sensors for a very long time using earbuds. And I think there's a lot of research out there as well. The novel thing is how we're doing it. We're not using PPG, so it is quite novel in that way.
What's PPG?
PPG is, I'm going to say it the wrong way, platis photo. Basically, you shine a light and it's reflected back, and that's how you're able to see the blood flow.
Hmm.
You know how?
Oh, like on watches and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So those are PPG technology where it's technically optical sensor.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that's how they worked. So what is like, I guess, like the business, like the initial business model that you intend to have? Is it, so I can imagine so many different ways of using your technology and like getting it out to people. I could see like one element of it kind of being like those like DNA tests you can do for like $100. Like you buy this thing, you check it out for like 2 weeks. Do you need it? And then if not, you send it back or something. I don't know, you get it cleaned or whatever. So I can see something like that. I basically, I could see so many different ways for you to make money and get this to people. So I'm just kind of curious, what is the business model for this type of thing?
Yeah, so we want to get started with really people who need this. So the chronic grinders we're talking about that has issues with it. And so the business model is we go direct to customers where they purchase it. They get the hardware and the app, and there's tons of features on the app for them to address their grinding and clenching behavior, look at their data, surfacing what it is that they do during the day that affects their bruxism at night. And then the way we started with that, because we really want to build kind of like a loyal following of people who will help us innovate with a product. Because I know this sounds really naive, but of course we want to make money. We want to be successful as startups. But one of my personal missions is also to change the way bruxism is addressed, because it's just long overdue. We know for a very, very long time that this is a behavior that has nothing to do with your bite, your teeth, or how your jaw is constructed. And yet people are still being offered all sorts of solutions that cost a ton of monies to, change their orthodontics, change their jaw reconstructive surgery, and a lot of things that really should not be done. I think there's a gentler, more holistic, better way of addressing it. So we believe that, hey, let's really focus on sort of like bruxism, helping people who really have a lot of issues and who are currently struggling, having tried, Botox and jaw surgery or mouth guards, 7 different kind of mouth guards, and not getting any effect from it. Let's help them. And as we start from those loyal followers, and then let's start grow to like the less chronic version, and then we can start addressing like what you were saying before, where people who have a little bit of an issue, they can check out this device for 2 weeks and see how bad it is. And maybe they will decide to keep the device because we also have features to simply improve your sleep, right? Sleep tracking and sleep improvement with audio stimulation. That's in the pipeline as well. So we're going to start with bruxism, but we have a lot of exciting things in store to address other sorts of sleep health issues.
Yeah. So you have the device, the hardware element of it. You have the app, which it sounds like from like a tech stack standpoint, this doesn't have to be like that complicated to get like that MVP up. I mean, the hardware side of it, that's complicated. Like that's like its own bag of worms. But like from the software, connecting the data and like rendering it to people, it sounds like it'd be very straightforward. The personalized medicine element of it, like taking the data and then knowing the granularity of it, it sounds like there would be like some type of like machine learning or statistical element that has to be there for that to be useful. Is that I guess, is that like a good guess? Because I imagine at some level you don't want to answer because then I'm like giving away your secret sauce.
No, we're super proud about that component, but everything that you're saying is absolutely true. And I'm sort of every day I go into work and I say, Selina, why did you start with the most hardest, complex thing that you can think of as your first startup, because you're absolutely right. It has a hardware component, it has a software, which is AI machine learning component, and it's also an app. And all three needs to work together and hum really, really well. The great thing is we do have a development partner who is an expert at making earbuds. So we've been working with them for the last couple of months to integrate our sensor into their platform. So the hardware platform, we have a really competent partner, and that's sort of like a big relief for us. We're focusing right now really on the algorithm side of things. So you actually move your jaw quite a bit during the night. So we need to be able to differentiate at an individual level. When is it really grinding, clenching, and when is it someone's just yawning or someone's just opening their mouth? And then on the app side, that's where a lot of the AI machine learning personalization is also happening, where customer inputted data is going to be correlated to their Bruxism data. And at the customer level, then they can see. I think we're going to start off really simple, simply surfacing what, certain tags that they have, how does that correlate to their Bruxism frequency and duration? Is consuming alcohol actually something that triggers their Bruxism, or maybe it's something else? So we're going to start at that, but yeah, fingers crossed, it's gonna, the more, not the more features, but as we get more data from customers who voluntarily share this with us, we can make it better for everyone.
Yeah. Is there an element of the machine learning where if the device thinks it's detected a Bruxism as an event, but it turns out not to be an event, that the user can input that data so you can then refine the algorithm further? Or so is there user feedback on that level?
Well, there is a reinforcement learning that happens in that, because Bruxism is totally subconscious. So it's not as if I will know what is a real episode and what is not a real episode either. So the user won't be able to provide that level of feedback, but what they could provide is, how do they end up feeling the next day? Is their jaw tension increasing or decreasing? How is their sleep? Is their sleep quality up or down? So that would give a score, for data reinforcement learning, to say, oh, it seems like we need to calibrate the detection this way or a different way. Where we're using it more is more on the biofeedback itself, or the feedback that it's providing, because there's a couple of different feedback we could provide the user. And I think it's going to vary from person to person, which one is going to be the most quote unquote effective in reducing the duration. So having their feedback in terms of, oh yeah, last night I get, I have a great sleep and my jaw tension is less. That's positive. Let's keep on following that path. And if the feedback from the customer is nope, that's not, then the machine learning, the algorithm needs to pick a different path.
Yeah. Well, I imagine there's maybe a dozen or more potential Bruxism events in a night. It's not like you do it once or twice or three times. It'll happen a bunch of times. That's what I'm imagining so far from what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And so there's a threshold. There's a threshold of sensitivity that you need to meet for the device to implement and then do some type of thing. So then it can't be so ignorant of everything else going around that it's missing the lighter stuff, because I imagine it all adds up. But then you can't be I guess the concern I'm trying to wrap my mind around is, if there are multiple events, the error rate and the significance of the error rate in the night, I wonder to the extent that would matter. And then how would you refine it if you can't differentiate it? Because let's say there's you could catch 1 in 3 of Bruxism events in a night, and then the people are oh, that's I'm 30% better. But then the pass fail of hey, it's better, but how much better? The granularity of it's not that granular. So you'd be able to improve a little bit, but it doesn't sound like you'd be able to capture everything in a really precision way. It's still gonna improve, of course, because you're grabbing 1 in 3 or whatever potentially, but it doesn't sound like you'd be able to know the error rate of each individual potential detection of Bruxism versus maybe it's something else and you intervene unnecessarily, versus you didn't detect it and you didn't intervene and like maybe it was missed?
Yeah, so for the detection algorithm itself, we're not just obviously doing it based on user feedback.
Yeah.
We're referencing it to actual quote unquote gold standard for Bruxism detection. So that's how we initially built the
Mm.
algorithm. And we wouldn't let it to customer until we get, greater than 95% accuracy in terms of detection. And I think what's been really neat is as we start looking at the data, it's quite clear when someone is having a bruxism episode versus when they're just, opening, yawning their mouth or whatever.
Oh, okay.
There's a rhythmicity that's happening in grinding and clenching. Even clenching, we think of it as like it's very static. It's actually not static at all. As you bear down, there's micro movement that's happening, and we are capturing that as well. So from
Okay.
a perspective, we're not just depending on reinforcement learning or customer
Hmm.
feedback to improve the algorithm. We're actually basing it off of a reference.
Okay,
Um,
sweet.
yeah, exactly. And what we care about is for people not to lose sleep because of our device. So we set the bar really, really high in terms of when we will intervene. It's only when we're absolutely sure, yes, this is an episode, when the feedback is going to be provided. Because if you miss like an episode or two, just for reference, people tend, like average user, they have anywhere from like 15 to 60 episodes per night. So that's, if you miss one or two episodes, that's not the end of the world.
Hmm.
But we absolutely do not want is providing this stimulation when nothing is actually happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does the stimulation like a does it counteract bruxism? Like the body sees that or feels that, and then it's like, oh, I need to stop because like for some like mechanical reason, or is like
Yeah.
the Pavlovian thing? Like how does the sensing like the earbud vibration or what have you result
Yeah.
in reduction in bruxism?
So it's actually simpler than that. And I need to
Mm.
come up with like a better marketing term or term for it. But it's the squirrel effect, I'd like to call it. Basically, the same part of your brain that's doing the grinding and clenching is the same one that's processing sensory data from the environment. So a lot of studies have been done that when you provide a sensory stimulus when someone is grinding or clenching, the brain is forced to switch to paying attention to whatever the sensory stimulus is. And as a result, it stops the grinding and clenching. And the person doesn't necessarily, quote unquote, wake up, because when these grinding and clenching episodes happen, they're already in this micro arousal stage anyway. So they're already in kind of like that really, really light sleep. And what we're doing is we're shortening the episode, and then they just go back to their normal sleep routine. And what's what I found really fascinating when we did our very, very first proof of concept, every day we would call the participant and basically say, okay, tell us how many times do you think you got, buzzed last night? And they would say, oh yeah, I think I felt it like once or twice. And then when we look at the device log, there were like 60 episodes that were that were detected and where they were given intervention. And I think this has been true not just in our research, but also in previous research. And it's true for, I think you probably know, like there are some startups there that's also addressing snoring and apnea this way. So this is sort of like a known phenomenon that in light sleep, you could deliver stimulation without completely waking people up and
Mm.
change what they were doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes you think that like there might be an application to all these other microarousal situations where like if you're in a safe environment and you know no one's gonna like break in and attack you, you can like implement this thing, and so
Yeah.
it's like oh you just have like cars drive by randomly at night or like a train makes a noise, and so
Yeah.
then when you start to have a microarousal, maybe like this thing could like vibrate, and be like no, don't pay attention to that, and then you go back to sleep, so you could potentially have like a deeper sleep.
Yeah, I think that's talking about deeper sleep. I mean, there's a whole body of research out there where they found if you give a specific type of sound stimulus that is matched to like your I'm gonna misquote this, but basically, if you give a certain specific type of sound stimulation with certain types of frequency, you can actually elongate how much time people spend in their slow wave sleep, in their deep sleep. So that's kind of like interesting. And I think that's definitely an area that deserves a lot of research, and an area that we're also looking at, because if we know the sleep stage, we know the breathing rate, and we can give this, a million types of different sound stimulation from, if you can even pre-record, your name being called very, very nicely and soothingly by your mom. I don't know, maybe that will provide some sort of effect. I'm just joking. But there's a lot of things definitely that's interesting for people who are into sleep biohacking.
Yeah. That's a good. I just imagine what would it be like if my mom whispered my name in the middle of the night. I would go from like 0 to how the heck did you get into this this house? It's like, what's happening? Like, 'cause she would have to like Kool-Aid man a lot of doors to get to where I'd be sleeping. And so it's like, for her to want to do that, like something bad must have been happening. So like, I imagine that's how my brain would take it. But yeah, the yeah, I have like really sensitive hearing, so I can like hear everything. I can hear most things within like 20 feet of me, no matter what's happening. I can hear it really well.
Yeah.
Like one time I was like, my room when I was growing up was near a road, as most rooms are, but there was a person, like I kept hearing like this yelling and I didn't know what it was. And so I came out of my room because I thought someone was screwing with me. Like just like very faint yelling, like very faint. Like I thought like maybe it was a ghost or something. I was like freaking out. But I was like, someone's screwing with me, as like, people do to kids. And then I wasn't hearing anything, so I then opened the door, walked out close to the road, and then the other side of the road where there's like a field, there's a person, and there was a car trying to run over a person. The person was yelling for help. But anyway, so like I hear a lot of things, so I can detect that stuff, and we like call the cops, got them help. But
Maybe.
so like this idea, yeah. So this idea that like something could help me not be aroused by all the things I hear would be nice, because then I could have a deeper sleep and then a happier life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also people think that you need to be quote unquote awake for you to hear things. Actually, if you just look at your EEG while you're asleep and then someone gives sound stimulation, you can see that the brain processes it, but you're not necessarily like awake. So there's some sub level of processing in terms of sound processing that happens even when you're not awake, when you're asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why what you just said reminded me of this really funny story. So you mentioned earlier that when you watch horror films,
Yeah.
that like you'd have more bruxism, and I was just thinking of because now I'm like thinking like childhood things, but like one time we watched a horror film of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and my dad like went outside at night and like revved up the chainsaw. And so I was just wondering, like, how many people had bruxism events that because of it?
A lot.
Yeah, I thought it was funny, but other people didn't have a sense of humor for it. But yeah, so I imagine the induced stress of that probably wasn't very good for those people. But yeah, so then would this be something like the device? Would it be like covered under a medical plan, or is this like something that people would expect to pay out of pocket, kind of like an iPhone or something?
I would love for this to be eventually covered by medical plan, but I also know that it's a super long road because, even, first of all, dental care, I think in a lot of geographies is not part of the healthcare plan. And I think bruxism overall is like, people don't think of bruxism as a severe condition. And a known condition, even though a lot of people struggle with it, of a lot of people that I think we both personally know have it. So our goal is to start by pricing it at a level that people can buy it out of pocket. And in the meantime, we're going to get the clinical evidence to show that it works. We're working with different medical centers and clinicians and key opinion leaders to really validate the technology. And over time, I hope we can build a body of evidence to show, yes, for this condition, this actually helps and it's better than the alternative. more cost effective than what's available out there, and therefore it should be covered under insurance plan. So that's the holy grail, that's the goal, but we also understand there's a lot of proving that needs to be done before we get there.
Yeah. Sounds like a huge educational problem that you have to go to like a lot of conferences and talk to a lot of dentists. But the nice thing there is that um, I think there'd be a big use for it, even if it wasn't like insured, for the dentist to know about it and then see this thing and then want to implement it to help people. I think that'd be interesting because dentists are always about that upsell. Last time I was in a dentist, I had like the back of my teeth guard thing like re-glued because it popped off. And the whole time they're just upselling me different things. Like, you know, we can make you a whole mouth thing. You want to get your teeth scanned while you're here? So only like 15. We'll quote you $15 extra to do this. And it's like, okay. It's just like I felt like I was in a chop shop. So like I feel for dentists out there, I'm just, you know, I'm like 50% giving you a hard time, 50% just telling you something that happened. But it seems like they would be open to like this type of upsell where they have this device, they can put it in there, and then potentially that gets them more revenue, even if they do have to like it isn't insured.
I think there's opportunity there, and there's also opportunity to provide more information to dentists about what bruxism is. I think a lot of them are still under the old view that, you know, it has something to do with your teeth or like your bite is off, and when it's actually really a central nervous system issue. And I think if they can get on board with that idea that, hey, this is not just a teeth issue, but also a sleep and a central nervous system, I wouldn't call it issue, but like, you know, it has something to do with how you sleep and your central nervous system. And there's this other solution that can help them. And by the way, yeah, it would give you more credibility in front of your patient. Then yeah, I think I would like them to get on board with it for sure.
Yeah. But the initial thing is going to be direct to consumer, right? So then how do you expect to get consumers to know about you and then want to buy it? And then how much will they have to pay?
Yeah. So I find it so interesting that the first thing people do apparently once that they're done to say, you seem like you grind your teeth, here is a mouth guard, people actually go home and Google what is bruxism, what is teeth grinding, and what is mouth guard, how much does a mouth guard cost? So people are already looking for solutions out there. And we've been able to capture customers using simply like content marketing, SEO, Google ads, social media ads, and a lot of word of mouth. You wouldn't believe, like every time we go to a conference or just talking to someone, afterwards we get approached by people who said, oh yeah, my boyfriend does it, my girlfriend does it, or my best friend does it, or like I do it myself, I absolutely want your product. So we've been really successful with those channels. So initially, price wise, we're gonna start at 300, and I really hope that is sort of like we're barely making money with that. And we hope to, yeah, eventually get it covered by insurance or make it more affordable or offer some sort of subscription plan, because what I would love is for people, for this to be affordable and for people to be able to use it and benefit from it. Like I get coached all the time by, you know, startup mentors who say, you got to price it really, really high. And because, you know, you can never get your price up, you can only get your price down. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I understand the economic theory behind it, but I also believe in having people try your product, use your product, provide feedback, and continue iterating and evolving that way. And so, yeah, what the pricing that we offer is like the, what do you call it? Our best effort in making this affordable, which I know might be high for some people, but we're definitely going to try to, yeah, have as many people be able to afford this and use this and benefit from it.
Yeah, I just pulled up Google Trends to see how often people look up bruxism to see, and it's like 75 to 100 people a day do it in the U.S. alone. Yeah. And apparently people out in Wyoming, you guys need help.
Well,
Wyoming needs help.
Look up teeth grinding or clenching.
Okay.
Yeah, not bruxism. Grinding.
Teeth grinding. I mean, this is like exciting content right now. I just wanted to like throw it out there. No, teeth grinding is less. It's the average for teeth grinding is like 20% less
Oh,
for the
interesting.
United States. But
Okay.
people in Wyoming, once again, y'all need help. So whatever's happening out in Wyoming to make you guys so stressful, maybe the cows. I don't know what's happening there. I've never been to Wyoming. I know it's near like kind of the Yellowstone region, but yeah, maybe that's a region to check out. But for
Just
for yeah, I was just curious. But uh, is there how hard is it as a business to do like a layaway financing option for people so that they can pay it over a period of time? Like, is there any like infrastructural like bank things that you have to do or any regulation stuff that you have to do to allow people, to pay like 15-20% each month? And I don't know if you have like an interest rate or whatever on top of that because it's depreciating. But like, how hard would it be to do something like that? I've always been wondering about that type of model. I don't know how it's actually done when it comes to like sausage being made.
it's not hard per se, because there are services that allows you to do that, right? Like I think people know Klarna, and then there's a few other ones that allows you to break up payments, like do a layaway payment plan. I think from our side, there's also like the capital. Yeah, there's some, as a startup, obviously it's already hard, but providing a layaway payment plan means like our forecasting needs to be like solid. Our return rate needs to be virtually zero, because otherwise that adds up in terms of how much inventory we need to have to get, yeah, to service all the customers. So from a startup perspective, that's the hard part, is the inventory part. In terms of like the logistics or the payment logistics of get people to do that, there's fortunately some providers that allows us to be able to offer something like that.
That's interesting. I was looking at other things on the thing. The Bruxism and like gum shield type stuff is up 3,000% over the last 30 days. So like this is like people get more stressed, and apparently Brazil is the most stressed in the world.
So interesting. So like it's Bruxism is a big thing in Brazil. It's a big thing in Japan, South Korea. We get requests a lot from distributors in these countries saying like, hey, is your product available? Because we would love to supply it over there. I don't know why. But there has been research that shows it is quite high in the East Asian population in terms of bruxism rate. So quite interesting.
Is there any hypothesis or whatever that's like a cultural or like genetic thing? I mean, most humans are like genetically similar. We're not actually that like dissimilar as a population. But is there any I guess not excuse, but like reason for it? Like that anyone has any hypothesis for?
There was a Nature paper recently that shows the genetic component of bruxism and how it relates to serotonin and is it the serotonin uptake? Something to do with the serotonin inhibitor. So there sort of is a genetic component to it, but then again, I am not a genetic expert and I can't really comment to like, okay, what is that? But also anecdotally, I think people often tells us, oh yeah, I grind my teeth and my mom also does it, or like my brother also does it. So I do think that there is a genetic component, but it's not like there is a bruxism gene. I think it's more of going back again to like the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system, and how that gene component affects those balance.
Yeah, there's in Europe a hemophilia for the royals came from Queen Victoria, the English queen, who basically like World War One was basically all of her siblings, like I mean all of her kids like fighting each other. But you can trace it back to those people, and so I wonder if there's like from a habit standpoint, like one like great grandmother who like really grounded her teeth and like slowly descended it on the rest of it of the East. That'd be kind of funny. The teeth grinding equivalent of hemophilia.
I mean, what's funny also is if you talk to expert, one of the other reason why we don't believe in eliminating bruxism is because there is a positive effect effect of bruxism. So like for those people who have who grinds or clench their teeth as a result or connected to their sleep apnea, this grinding clenching movement actually opens up the airway. So, there is a positive effect of grinding and clenching. It's just that, like what we were talking about before, it seems like in some people, they keep doing it after it's useful for them. So yeah, evolutionarily, maybe there is a reason why it sticks around in our gene pool, right? There is actually a benefit to it.
Yeah. And then you guys have a subreddit. There's like, a lot of very passionate people there actually. And you did an AMA and whatnot. But one thing that I saw routinely people asking about was like beta testers, how do we get in on this? And people were raising a concern that was being pushed back to December. And they did not know. And so I did not know. And I could not Google what happened. But I think there was like a product thing that happened. So like, what was the push? And like, what better thing is going to come from the delay for people who want to be beta testers?
Yeah. And to everyone who's listening and all our passionate followers, my apologies, my deepest apologies that, I think our communication could have been better in terms of why there is this delay. I think one thing is we really underestimated how difficult it is to build a brand new algorithm on a sensor that is literally first in the world. Just in terms of, building the tool so that we can look at our data, label it, annotate it, and then build an algorithm on top of that. I think we have so severely underestimated how much resources is needed on that front. But we're getting all of that figured out, and so that's all. And then the second part is, of course, on the hardware issue. Before last year, we had a back order issue with the main sensor that we're using, where there was like I kid you not, it was like a 16-month delay or like supply time on the sensor. And so we're like, we don't have 16 months. So we had to pick a different sensor, but that also means we have to test it, validate it, integrate it, which was not built into our plan. And then the last thing was I think I mentioned earlier, we have a development production partner now who's really an expert in making things small, making Bluetooth products, making hearable products. And this partnership was something that happened so serendipitously, but also so positive for us, because now we finally are able to, develop this vision that we've always had from the beginning, which is this very small, elegant earbuds that is completely wireless. So that's what people are going to be getting in December. Before this delay, we were still having one that has a neck loop behind, and I dare to say it was a little bit janky, but we really want to get prototype out there for people to test it. But with this new partner, we could leapfrog the whole development process and get the wireless version in December, which I think I'm super happy about it. I think people should be very happy about it. And with this prototype, as soon as people say, yeah, this works, this is great, maybe people have a little bit of feedback here and there, but once that's done, we can go into full scale production really, really quickly with this partner. So that's what's been happening on the back end. And it's funny, I've been a medical device developer for 10 plus years now. And each time I'm reminded, like, holy shit, when you're making like a brand new novel product, how much uncertainty and risk there are, and things just always happens, both good and bad, that you did not expect. And it's really hard to build that into the calendar. Anyway, but that's not an excuse. I just want to express like how thankful we are to have like people who believe in us and what we're doing. Like a lot of people, I really expect like 50% of people to say like, give me my money back, you can't push it to December. But actually people were like sending us email and say like, hey, I know it's really hard to build a product like this. Thank you for continuing working on it. So that's what gives us the push to keep on going. Like, I love being an entrepreneur because I don't really have a boss. I am my own boss, but I actually consider this initial customers that we have, people on the subreddit, people who are following us, as my boss. Like, that's who I'm working for them.
Yeah. And so then, when it comes to realizing that more resources need to be put into just on the software side of things, what was like the missing resources? So if I could take you back like to the beginning of the year or earlier, and I could say like, hey, this is what you need to do to like make sure this doesn't, like, on the software side of things. Hardware, it sounds like you were gonna have that problem, but
Yeah.
what were the missing resources? Like, what were the extra elements? Was it like a missing team member? Well, what more needed to be done on that level?
Definitely missing team members. Like, I wish we could have started like last year with full development team with a senior developer with AI machine learning background that's fully staffed on the team, and then a couple of developers under the person. But unfortunately, as a startup, you just don't have the luxury of having that full development team. So we had to outsource some parts of that. But the risk with outsourcing sometimes is that, you don't know what you don't know. And so that was the issue. And overall, I would say, like, financing for a consumer product hardware in a market, Bruxism, that people don't really know about has been quite challenging. So I wish we had basically just raised a little bit more money last year so that we could have that third, fourth team member from the beginning. Yeah, last year.
Yeah. Is there an argument to be made that you didn't need the hardware component? Like, you could have like taken the software interventions, because like if you can emit sound from an earbud, I imagine you can emit other vibrations. Like, I feel like that's probably like a thing. So then instead of needing like a special device, you could just take your like the intellectual technology and like go in on like an AirPod or something that people already have, and have it have the same effect. Or did you really need to have the hardware for it?
We tried people's hardware because we really try to minimize the work we need to do on the hardware. And basically, there were two things that were that forced us in a way to develop our own hardware. And in a sense, it's a good thing that we ended up here. But so most of the earbuds that are out there are really not designed for sleep. They're too bulky, they're too uncomfortable, the antenna sticks out. So it's really a hard sell, I would say, to ask someone to sleep with this, especially if they have to wear it, every single night for the next 3 months or 6 months or whatever. So just from a form factor alone, it was impossible. And then the second part is, how do you detect bruxism accurately, right? Because we were talking about that, like how we don't want to provide intervention when there's actually nothing happening. And so we look at all of the hardware that's out there and what sensor is already in those devices that we could use to detect bruxism. And basically, none of them meet our strict criteria for, really, really accurate, so that we don't deliver intervention needlessly. So because of that, we ended up, okay, fine, we have to develop our own hardware. But what's really neat about it is, in the course of doing that, we found this area that's been unpatented, totally free and clear. We were able to basically develop our own sensor in that field. And it's it's amazing, because with just this one sensor, we could detect jaw movement, breathing, and heart rate all in the same go. And using all of that, then we can look at sleep stage. So, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. The curse being like, we need to have our own hardware. The blessing is that, whoa, this is a whole area of innovation that we wouldn't have gotten into if we had just gone with someone else's hardware. And of course, as a business, when you use someone else's hardware, you're also tied to them and you're kind of dependent on them. Anytime they do an upgrade or anytime they decided to launch a new product line, you gotta like go along with them. Whereas if you have your own hardware, you have a little bit more control.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of vertical integration. I think that's one of the things that allows Apple to be very successful and have the margins that they do, to the point where they have a bank of just sitting on all that, like a lion's hoard of cash. But at the same time, then you have like Microsoft models that are more like horizontally integrated and stuff. So I can see
Yeah.
like the yin and yang of it, like the push and pull of the different methods that you could use. Um,
Yeah.
the the
I'm a
I
sucker for,
know
just to put it out there. I love building things that I could see, touch, and feel and mold. So, I mean, the team actually had a ton of fun as we're developing this. And yeah, I love hardware. I know it's hard, and it's the iteration timeline is like super long, and investors hate hardware, but I love it.
yeah, the but yeah, tangible things are things that people don't get to do. I think one of the problems that a lot of people have, which is nice at some level, because I release my episodes and then people don't have anything to do from like 1 to 3 because they have jobs that that just like make them look busy versus like doing interesting things. Because that's like a big component of like when people listen, I can like see it on my charts.
Yeah.
Is that they go through their job and it's like, what is significance what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and with something physical, something that's serious like this, like you can see it, you can touch it, and especially since you were like personally affected by it, I think that's really big as well.
Mhm.
But from I think like it's segueing a little bit to the business side of it a little bit. How how big of a team do you need to build something like this? I mean, you have a partner for some of the elements, which I think it's a big thing that people don't realize. Like the Neuralinks, the Paradromics, like all these like BCI, like you think like they're building like the whole thing in house. Like no, they have like I was just
Yeah.
thinking if I am like violating an NDA with what I'm saying. No, they come sue me. Like they partner out with people. I think they have like publications on this. I'm not revealing anything I'm not supposed to know. Uh, so like the idea that you're partnering with something, like some people are like, oh, building a house, whatever. But like that's a normal thing. So how big of a team and what is the specialization you need to build to this level that you have, where it seems like you're on the verge of success, in the sense of like how I view success here is being able to have something that actually helps people. And
Mhm.
so like if you can have like this big release in December, that seems like you're right on the verge of being successful. So then what are the team elements that you needed to have to
Yeah.
get to that level?
It's so interesting because I just had a conversation with someone about, like a lot of times startups get measured by like how many full-time employees you have. So like in terms of
Yeah.
like full-time employees, we have very, very few.
Hmm.
Like my partner and I are the only two full-times, but in terms of like how many people are actually working on this, so there's probably like 10 hardware engineers alone that's working on this with our partner. There's 4 to 5 software developers that's working on the algorithm and the app. There's a marketing team of like 4 to 5. There's consultants on the regulatory side. And if you add up like how many people have been so instrumental, not just like spending a couple of hours here and there, but actually instrumental in getting us to where it is, I think it numbers in like the 50. But I think in the olden days, in the old, I'd like to call like the old medical device model, you kind of hire all of these people. And then you need to have maybe like 10 to 20 on staff just to get to your first approval. And I feel like the world is changing, where not only are there so many like freelance and consultants that you can use to staff and get the skills you need to get to where you are. I think people are also interested in not just working on one project, but they become a consultant and be involved in like 4 different projects, because there's a cross fertilizations that happens. People are more flexible with their time. I think you can make an argument for that. But so it's really hard to answer like how big of a team do you need
Mm.
in terms of like full-time employee. But for us, obviously we need the hardware engineers, we need industrial engineers, we need the software side, we need apps, we need marketing, we need regulatory, we need clinical, we need legal. So those are kind of like the big things, and then on top of like the back end stuff. But those are
Yeah.
sort of the big departments that we need to get a product in the market.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. I think longtime listeners will know that like there's even models of horizontal integration. I would call it like when you have like contractors and stuff, like versus like having everyone inside is like a form of that. But there are pharmaceuticals, like cancer pharmaceuticals that are being made where it's like
Yeah.
2 people full time, and they
Yeah.
partner out like the testing and all these different things. But because they're developing the IP the whole time, it's still an investable product. Like The idea that you need like this massive, if you have like 25 people on your staff, like that's somewhere between like a quarter and like 500,000 burn rate per month. And so, yeah. And so, like versus like what you have now is probably like more like 25 to $35,000 per month in a burn rate. But so like the distance you can go while
Yeah.
doing something significant is much more like this like bigger bang for your buck. Like you can do more. And sometimes
Yeah.
people write in like, oh, how can I do these things? Whatever. And it's like, I actually like just find some good partners. I mean that's really hard to do. Like who can you count on, right? And the nice thing about hardware is the reputation's a really easy thing to measure. I feel like if you're kind of a jerk, I feel like you're known to be a jerk. Like if you like your hardware partner, if you, I'm sure you did like some due diligence on like who else has worked with them, what is it like, etc. And
Yeah.
because if you're gonna put all that time into it, time and money, that's one of the things that like a lot of people they try to abstract away the development. They'd like hire outside developers to handle the whole thing. And the problem there is like there's just so many of them. Like it's better that like in my opinion to have like some part time or like full time in house to like have like a product dev cycle. But I'm sure there's like people who can do that. But like hardware, like this it's like kind of like they're fixed. I feel like there's like only so many of them. So then like their reputation is like really easy to like vet, which is kind of nice.
Especially when you start going, if you talk about like how many consumer product developers out there, of course, like there's million in the world. But if you go deeper into like, okay, making hearable products, that's a really small universe. And, you gotta be a good partner for you to stay in the industry. Otherwise, everyone just hears about it. But yeah, I love this new business model of like keeping things small and at a low burn until you really get that product market fit and you're ready to scale. Then you start bringing all the key necessary components in-house, right? But of course, from the very beginning, we know what is our value. Okay, we got value in the patent, we got value in the design, we got value in the customer relationship. So those are things that we really like keep close to the chest. And now we're getting to the point where like, okay, the algorithm part of thing is really key, it's really important. So we need to bring those in-house as well. But yeah, I don't see the need why. Yeah, I love that example you have about the pharmaceutical company with just like two full-time. I've heard it a lot. I know a few that's like that. And yeah, I just think it's so cool.
Yeah. And the funny enough, the area you're in, and I'm not going to get more granular than that for weirdos out there who want a great place to live, because I'm not allowed to, but the area you're in and Switzerland, apparently there's a lot more of them in that area. Like this like two like this team, and then like they outsource a lot of it. But the thing that I think very interesting when I talk to entrepreneurs and like people write in like, oh, can I be an entrepreneur? Like, do I need these special skills? Like I don't have the skills of being an entrepreneur. It's like the weirdly enough, like an entrepreneur just kind of has a way of thinking that like is applied in other ways. And so before we were talking today, I asked you about like anything like wild that you've done in your life, and you talked about how instead of so you did like this long trip, but instead of like planning it out, you just started doing it. And that's I think that the big thing is you can have a plan, like an outline, a roadmap, but like when you like Mike Tyson said, like everyone has a plan and then they get punched in the mouth and it goes away. And so I'd love to hear more about this this point of origin starting at Cape Town and like driving through Africa until like essentially COVID had to like external factors of like a pandemic level thing had to come in to stop you from doing what you wanted to do. And you still I think found a way through it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was, started with like a really silly, I think we watched some episode of this reality TV where this group of 20 somethings bought, the shittiest car they could find and then drove it from Germany all the way to well, their goal was to go to Cape Town, but I think they got stopped in Congo. And so we were sort of like really enjoying that show and saying like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to do something similar. And we were in Turkey and we were just having dinner and we said, okay, what if we just fly to Cape Town and see what the deal is? Can we buy a car there and figure out how to drive it all the way to Cairo? And thanks to internet, we found that there's like a whole community that does this and get some tips and tricks on how to do it. And before we know it, basically a month later, we have a car, 25-year-old car that we bought secondhand and fitted it with a tent, a rooftop tent on top. And we bought all sorts of secondhand tools to make sure that we can rescue ourselves if we get stranded somewhere in the jungle. And yeah, we started our trip in Cape Town. We went up to Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, all the way basically to Ethiopia before COVID hits. And I love that you connected it to the startup, because I think it is sort of like a startup mentality where we're like, we have limited amount of budget to be able to do this. We don't have the luxury of planning it for 6 of 12 months. We're sort of like, okay, let's just go there and figure things out along the way. And I think for the most part, it works. There's a lot of people that you could ask for advice who has done it before, that you could get tips on how to navigate certain situations. And it also helps you develop confidence and sort of like the street common sense of what to do and what not to do. And, after a while, we're like, I think more people should do this. This is so awesome. Yeah.
Is there a road connecting from Germany to Cape Town? Is there like a road that you can take, just go the whole way?
Yes.
I would think there's like a jungle or something you have to like drive through.
Let me think. No, I think you can. You can do it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's possible.
We don't get that in America.
You don't get that in America. Yeah, that's true. You have the Darien Gap that you can't cross.
Yeah, there's too many crazy people in there or something. Like, there's a lot of like criminals that prevents it. Also, like the topography is quite obnoxious. But
yeah,
the Darien Gap, for anyone listening, is like south of the Panama Canal that keeps like South America and North America from being connected. And you can blame the cattle industry, because the people in the North America didn't want the cattle from South America with a certain disease from coming up here and like polluting the area. And they kept blocking it, and now it's just kind of intransigent. But but they had reasons. So like, let's not be mean. But when you were traveling through Africa, was there? So like, what did it look like? I don't want to ask like such a dumb question. It's like, what did it look like? Because I like this is very like, Africa is bigger than, I think you could eat like Europe like 4 or 5 times. But was it like rainforest the whole way? Like, what were some of the areas that were like really noteworthy to you as like really beautiful, really like memorable?
I mean, I think that's an interesting part about Africa. We think of Africa as like this one big place, and we tend to call it as, the continent instead of the individual country, because the individual country is actually very, very varied in terms of its geography, climate, culture, people, food, politics, everything you can think of. So it was so special to be able to go overlanding into each country, and as you cross the border, suddenly the landscape changed, right? And I think that's what's special. But some of the memorable ones was like Namibia. So that's north of South Africa on the East Coast. And we were driving through kind of like these sand dunes for hours and hours and hours. And then suddenly there was a sign that says, "Caution, sand." And we're like, yeah, duh, we've been driving through sand for the last 3 days. Thanks for letting us know now. But I've never been in that kind of landscape before, and it's quite impressive. And so when we were driving through parts of Namibia and parts of Botswana, you literally just see a giraffe just like crossing the road. And you're not even like in a park or anything. You were just driving through the highway, and like, there's the wildlife just right there. And yeah, it's so special that way. I think, I grew up in Indonesia and then the US, and then now here. You don't get to see wildlife that up close and personal ever. And of course, having the luxury of, camping on top of the car. One night we actually woke up to hear there's a herd of elephant just roaming through, and it's literally, like a couple of 100 meters away from you. And yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like so special being so close and so in nature. I think we don't get to experience that kind of environment a lot these days.
Especially elephants. Elephants are like, they're like geniuses. They're really, really smart animals. So it's like they knew you were there. They're probably like, "Oh, look, there's a human. Let's go walk near them."
They're probably checking us out. It was like wanting to see like what's going on here. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
exactly.
how do you stay safe on a trip like that through all the different nations and different regions? How do you like? I was thinking like, oh, that'd be really fun, but then like, what if someone tries grabbing my kidneys?
How do you what?
I was just like, my concern is like someone will try and steal my kidneys, but like, how do you stay safe when you're on a trip like that?
That's the thing. I feel like of course there's always danger, but I think the level of danger that we think about in our head is greater than what it actually is. Like there's very, very few times during the trip that we felt like something bad is going to happen to us. I think I mean, at least for me, I subscribe to the belief that 99.99% of people in the world are actually not like a pathological criminal or a sociopath who's like trying to kill you or like do something bad to you. Most people are nice, and even when they're not, it's very rare that they're gonna cross over into like that life-threatening level. Most of the time we just figure out how to navigate that. And of course, being able to travel with the two of us, I think the experience would have been like totally different if I'm like traveling by myself, for example. But I think traveling with another person, partner who I really trust and we work well really together, we can sort of, we both, I think, have a pretty good common sense where we can sense when people are not being truthful or it's feeling a little sketchy, and in which case we just say like, all right, we're gonna go somewhere else. See ya. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was it all either in the car or on the top of the car? Or did you go out and like out into the dunes or into any of the spots you went, like on a hike or whatever?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. I think we would basically, what we tend to do when we're in the city, then we'll just park the car in the hostel and we'll take the public transport like the locals do, like go around without our car, because we feel like that's the best way of experiencing the city. And then when we're out in a park or like in the sand dunes, then we'll just park the car by the campsite and go for a walk or something like that. One time the car died, so we actually had to walk to get help, which is maybe like 5 kilometers away. And so that's quite an experience in itself. And I think, it really sets us up for being in a startup and knows how to fix your own shit when things doesn't work.
So I think the advice here is to like go on little adventures in your life if you can. If you have the space for it, even if it's just like on the weekend, like maybe and like I guess like the training here would be plan it as least as possible so you can just like interact with the world. Like I want to go from Florida to New York and back, in a day. I think you could do that in like a weekend. That's not that far, but so you could find like little ways to challenge yourself and that instinctual like train that instinct of yours. It's like how you like operationalize what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I think even better when things doesn't work out to your plan, because that gives you the confidence of like dealing with, unexpected things. And you just say, okay, that didn't work out the way I planned it. That's fine. I'm still here. I'm still alive. How can I course correct and still get to my destination? And not get like so thrown off by the fact that it didn't go according to your plan. I think that was the biggest thing. Yeah. Like, okay, so what? We get held back in immigration because they think our paperwork wasn't right. And, you can get really, really upset about it and demand them, be super angry with them, which just won't help your case. Or you can just kind of like stay it out and be, what do you call it, resourceful, call a bunch of different people and figure out how you can go. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people are kind of like stuck in these bubbles where it's very procedural almost, like they're in like a video game where like everything's on the tracks. And so it doesn't take that much work for you to build this type of muscle to the level where like it's competitive to the people around you. Like if you're, like you go to work, you have these things that are presented to you as things to work on. Maybe you have some subject, like some optionality for how you deal with the problems or like what problems you work on. But like the more you get to the comfortable with that, like the unknown, like when some unknown hits you, not just like something like, oh, I don't know what's happening, I'm going to go left or right, but like border is stopping you and they're like potentially, you said the wrong thing and maybe they're grumpy at you or something like that, like some like danger element to it. Like once you get really comfortable with that, Then when there's a time to ask for a raise, like you're going to be a little bit more calmer when they try and use all those like, tactics on you and stuff like that. I think it's like little, I think it's often very surprising to me how if you just do a little like 1 to 10% better or different in a different way, like
Yeah.
that little difference can make a huge impact on your life.
Yeah. And I think to me, that trip specifically, it takes me to a level where I think in our modern society, we think to like amplify danger that's like actually more mental, but doesn't actually affect your survival, but you make it so big that it almost feels like I'm gonna die. I don't get this promotion, oh my god, I'm gonna die. Or like my something got rejected, oh my god, I'm going to die. Like that feeling of dying. But then when you're confronted with that type of like really raw primitive travel where there is danger, one day we woke up and we basically saw lion tracks all over our campsites, which means that there were lions roaming all around. When you kind of get brought down to that level of like primal danger, then it puts everything else into perspective, where you're like, oh, you know what, like a lot of the troubles that you tend to over amplify in your head is actually like, you're still alive, you're still here.
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't get this investment from this investor. Okay, it's fine, we're still here, we can still survive, we can figure out what to do next. It's that kind of perspective taking.
Yeah. I think like an example, I'm going to ask you advice for aspiring entrepreneurs in a second, but I think an example of that is like rejection. Like, can you send out like 2 to 3 emails to people that you don't know, trying to like learn something or do something in an environment and be completely fine with them saying no to you?
Yeah.
I think like practicing that, like I think some people are like, oh, go try and like, get a person's number or whatever. That's a little too sleazy in my opinion. Like for that, because that person kind of like objectifies someone on a level, like they're just like a prop on your development. But I think if you email people like in a genuine interest to learning with Lowell, that'd be like a good way to like kind of build that as well. But what advice would you give to entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs?
In terms of dealing with rejections or just dealing with uncertainties.
No, what? Yeah, no. In general, that was just my first thing that I thought of as like advice I'd give people who want to like build the skills to get to where you are. But just as a general thing, like what advice would you give people who want to be entrepreneurs? Is there things that books recommend, experiments you recommend people check out, things that you think they should learn, that type of thing? Just like that's a very big question. So like literally anything that came to your mind is fine with me.
Just go do it. Well,
Yeah.
I think like I've been wanting to be an entrepreneur probably my whole life, and it wasn't until 3 years ago that I developed the courage to do it, right? And I think for anyone listening who wants to be an entrepreneur, I think the advice I could give is like find something that you really care about, because the startup journey is not easy. And when you're working about something that you care about, it makes it easier, because every day or when you encounter challenges, you can always go back to that thing that you care about and say, this is why I'm doing it. Yeah, because that's kind of either that's your destination, or it's the why you want to be an entrepreneur in the first place. Whatever it is, find your why, because that's the thing that's going to keep you going through the ups and downs of this startup journey.
Yeah. And then for you personally, is there anything that you're trying to learn or get better at? The nice thing is there's usually someone listening in that is an expert in that or something. They'll leave a comment being helpful. Sometimes they'll just email me, and that's the same thing. But is there anything you're looking to learn right now, or you're trying to improve upon yourself?
I'm really trying to learn about sound processing during sleep.
Mm.
That's what I'm trying to learn right now. I'm reading a bunch of articles about that, kind of like what happens in sound processing in terms of like when you're awake and when you're asleep, when you're in different sleep stages, how does it changes? What is different effect of sound have on people? And yeah, that's what I want to learn more about. And if you know anything about that, I would love to connect with you.
Sweet. And then what would be the best way for people to stay up to date with what you're working on? Is there like I think there is a newsletter. So is there like one place you point people to stay up to date at?
Yeah, if you go to our website, getsølvn.com, you can sign up to our newsletter. We try to send email once every 2 weeks. And yeah, you can also always email us and see what we're doing. we're still pretty intimate with our customers that way, that if you send me an email, I'll reply to you.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, sweet. Then, Selina, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. Hope everyone got something from this. If you did, please comment below, because we like to read these things. Or at least I do. I don't know. I reply to everything, unless you're a jerk. Then I shadow ban you. But Selina, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Lowell. It's been a great pleasure.